All right, we should be ready to rock and roll here. Welcome back to episode 2 of the Unalienable Right. Myself, Shawn Farash, and obviously the legend known as Dr. Cordie Williams with good audio today. That's hashtag good audio Cordie. We're here. We got all the problems fixed from last week to this week because we are using a new program to bring in our videos, so we should sound good. We should look good. Cordie always looks good, so I mean it's usually my problem on that one there. But we're
Oh
here.
my God, what am I gonna do with you, kid? You Puerto Rican guy, you Puerto Rican Trumpster.
Yes, that's right. I'm Puerto Rican, you know. I call myself Corn Puppy. That's what we call ourselves, Corn Puppy. We're here, episode 2, a little late, but we're here, ready to rock and roll with another one. And obviously, a big topic going on. I don't know if many people probably didn't hear about it. It was the wonderful governor of California, and by wonderful I mean terrible, Gavin Hairdo Newsom, signing a bill that is supposed to police physicians and doctors over their stances on COVID-19, which is, I mean, it's a horrible kind of idea. That is, I mean, talk about medical freedom. You have the freedom to, start your own practice and do so responsibly. Now you have the governor essentially telling you how to think, which is just, it's alarming in that sense. We were talking before the show, though, about vaccinations and mandatory vaccinations and things that have happened in our state and things that have happened in your state. And let's kind of start on that topic. And if our stream is going in and out, of course, Optimum is doing things because Optimum, our internet provider here on the East Coast, is Optimum. And I'm unable to monitor the chats right now. I'm sure it'll be back in just a second. But when it does rejoin, I'll be able to pull up some of those stories. But Dr. Cordie Williams, why don't you tell us a couple of the sticking points that we were just talking about vaccines, the COVID vaccine, the flu shot. We are on YouTube, but I really don't care if we say something that they don't like. It is what it is. We're also on Rumble. We're on Getter. We're on Twitter, which is now in new hands, which maybe we'll get a chance to talk about later in the show. But you were telling me a story about friends of yours and folks that you were speaking to regarding the COVID vaccine and the flu shot. And folks that maybe didn't want to get the COVID vaccine that may be lining up to go ahead and get vaccinated for the flu. What's going on over there?
Yeah, well, Shawn, I think it's really interesting. We've innately throughout our, the history of humanity, we've had this great thing that God gave us called the immune system. Our brainstem, our brain, we've got interleukins, interferons, tumor necrosis factor, natural killer white cells that are all designed to keep our body healthy and prevent infections, viruses, whatever you want to call it. And this thing called a vaccine comes into play 50, 60 years ago. And I could go down that rabbit hole if I wanted to. But let's just talk about this pharmacology industrial complex, which is really all you can call it at this point. And let's look at the ingredients of some of these vaccines. I mean, dead baby fetal tissue, mercury, aluminum, right? And then the other thing that you have is in 1981, I think I said this on the program last week, Ronald Reagan signs this bill that he doesn't know where he's removing liability. And since then, since I was a kid, and I'll be 43 in January, it went from 24 doses of vaccines to 72. So you have the CDC lying, you have us being told to wear these facial apparatuses on our face, and then this imaginary distance of 6 feet, and then, which I never saw any research to back that up, standing and sitting, or the difference between living and dying, and then plexiglass is somehow a three-dimensional covering that just like the boy, what was his name? Bubble Boy, I think.
Bubble Boy.
That you're encased. Yes, Bubble Boy, right? Yeah. The virus can't hurt you with the one-dimensional plexiglass, even though there are open sides to it above and down. And I always found it fascinating during the middle of the COVID SEAM, also known as the COVID scam. I could go around the left or right of the plexiglass and talk to the person and hear them. But sometimes they weren't worried about the fact that I would transmit my COVID scam virus on them. So funny stuff. But yeah, no patients will come in adamant about not getting the COVID shot, the boosters and all that. And then recently it's come up, well, doc, I'm really concerned. Flu season is coming up. Should I get the flu shot? And I'm going to categorically say no. Your body's a self-healing, self-regulating organism. If it's not healing, there's got to be a reason or a cause. And let's get your immune system up, and then your body can fight off anything, just like my kids have been doing their entire life.
And your kids are as healthy as they can be, is what you're telling me, right? They're basically, a picture-perfect model of health and what people should look like. And I've heard them in the background when we're on the phone, by the way. Lively, beating the heck out of each other. We love it. And I'm looking forward to maybe meeting them in about a week or so to see these little guys. And obviously a lot of people know one of the kids in that awesome ad back in the campaign about, San Francisco and pooping in the streets. It was that was one of the best ads I think I've ever seen done. And to everybody who's watching, I do apologize. We have in New York this internet provider. It's called Optimum, all right? And they are, by all means, the single worst provider. I can't monitor any chats right now. I can't use the internet, so the stream is probably going to be glitchy for the next little bit. I have no idea what's going on. I honestly, I got to tell you, I don't know what I'm paying for. I'm probably be better off rubbing two sticks together to get internet in this apartment that I'm in, because this provider is just garbage. It's garbage like both of our governors, like Kathy Hochul and Gavin Newsom, who want to regulate. Well, Newsom right now wants to regulate what doctors are saying and how they're what they're saying about COVID and their stances, as if that even matters anymore. When COVID at this point is polling at around a whopping 1% in terms of how relevant it is that people feel it actually is or isn't. And yet he's still trying to push it, and everybody knew it. There were folks like you, folks like me, who were saying it back in the day, that the COVID measures, the draconian lockdowns and all of those things weren't about safety. It was about control. And that's probably why a governor like Kathy Hochul, who wasn't elected, who now finds herself in a seat of power and doesn't want to lose it, desperately clinging to that power. Gavin Newsom, who just got recalled, and survived that election. But, you could say he survived that for a number of reasons, and some of which may be because of foul play. But we saw that, and we saw that, a lot of the COVID policies that were put in place, they weren't for public safety because they didn't make sense when you took public safety into account. They were for control. Am I right about that?
No, 100%. And we're hearing nothing about it on mainstream news networks. For the most draconian state in this, right, of New York or San Francisco or LA or somewhere like that, in rural areas, nobody's wearing masks. You'll occasionally have, the freak that looks like a walking condom that has plastic all over his body, like that's going to save him of the flesh-eating bacteria. But for the most part, it's out of sight, out of mind. And I think that sometimes we need to go back and think about everything that we lost during that time. You mentioned control, Shawn. You hit the nail on the head. Like, look at what we lost. Look at the amount of suicides there were, depression, anxiety. You think about, I just think of, like, my mom's basically on her deathbed, right? Not far from transitioning home to the Lord. And I missed 3 years with her. 3 years where I couldn't travel. You think about people like 14-year-old Iris Allen that hung herself because she couldn't go back to school. And then 6 months later, her mother, takes her own life with a bullet to the head. How many stories are there like that? And people want to go on, as usual, as business as usual, when we have this government that lied to us. CDC lied to us. Everything that you and I were talking about, Shawn, during the middle of the COVID scam, they're kind of now admitting that they did. And I can't believe there's not more public outcry. And I can't believe there's still people that are sheep that will, be pathetically sitting in a car by themselves and swallowing their own CO2 with a facial condom on. It's just, you can't make it up, man.
No,
you really can't.
Make it up. You can't make it up. And I made this comparison on a few of the shows that I was speaking on earlier today about, the illegal immigration. And you're in a border state, but I said that every state in the country now is a border state thanks to fentanyl. And you could do a search as simple as this and go on Google and just type in NYC, New York City, NYC crime, and you could find out that this is a problem. But it's not just a problem in New York City, as I had shown earlier in the day, where we actually had in a county here in upstate New York, as you can see on your screen, a fellow by the name of Tad Sherwood, who was arrested on September 10th, 2022, 8:44 p.m. on 2 charges: the criminal possession of a weapon in the 4th degree and a murder in the 2nd degree. These were his charges, and if you pay attention to what it says there is a release date. He hasn't had a trial yet, but he has been released. So we've released a murderer. We've released
Shawn,
a murderer.
I think that might be Corn Pop's uncle, and a future Biden voter.
Corn Poppy, yes, that was Corn Poppy's uncle, Corn Pop, as they would say, and maybe he's got hairy legs too. I don't know, but but it's scary when you find out that it's not just an issue in the city anymore. You found out. I had an email hit my inbox last night from the New York Daily News, no friend of conservatives, that said that there was a massive fentanyl bust in the city of candy-colored fentanyl pills that were being smuggled into New York City in a Lego box. I played with Legos when I was a kid, and I wouldn't think anything of it looking in there. And now all you have to do is touch the stuff and touch your face, and you know that it can have a very serious impact on you. I mean, there are people out there trying to kill children right now, which is par for the course when it comes to the left, and I'm not afraid to say that. And I said this earlier, again, back to public safety. Every state has become a border state. Now, all of a sudden, Kathy Hochul, the great unelected, I call her Cuomo in a dress. She is worse than Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo. And she said, no, we need a federal solution. You ready for this? We need a federal solution to the border crisis. Does that sound like something folks like us have been saying for the last 6 years? A federal solution, maybe building a wall, maybe securing the southern border, but a federal solution for the border crisis, because wouldn't you know it, the sanctuary state that is New York, sanctuary city that is New York City, just can't handle this influx, which was what we've been saying. We heard about it happen in California with Kate Steinle so many years ago, back when Bill O'Reilly was still on Fox News pushing for Kate's law. These cities can't take on the burden. And what do? We build a tent city for them in the Bronx, in Orchard Park, which floods. It floods. And instead of maybe finding another solution, what they've done is they're taking these illegal immigrants now, and they're putting them on a Norwegian cruise ship for temporary housing. Okay? So you, in one hand, are taking illegals and putting them on a cruise ship. In the other hand, when you had a floating Navy ship on the Hudson River, when COVID was peaking its first go-around here in the United States, they took the elderly, and instead of putting them on that ship, instead of putting them in field hospitals, they sent them back into nursing homes where they were about to kill the rest of their friends with this virus that ravaged the elderly population in both of our states. These policies never had anything to do with public safety. And as I said, I believe I said it last week, and I don't like to quote Andrew Cuomo, but he said, if the rules don't make sense, people aren't going to want to follow the rules. And I don't like following these rules. I know you're not a fan of following these rules, these forced vaccinations, these forced masks, all of these different things. What can we do? What would you suggest we do as the people who are supposed to be in charge of the governors? What would you suggest that we do to fix this?
Well, I think it's time, hands, and money. And I think it's everybody involved, because there are forces, and I'll never quit saying this, because it needs to be put on repeat over and over and over again, is the right people. The only way we're going to win this fight, and I think it's a spiritual demonic war. It's also a political one. It's also one to save our children. There are people out there right now making decisions to back rhinos. There are people out there right now that are profiting off of the last 3 years, continuing to profit off of it. And somehow we have to reach those people, because what I would say to the average, layman or freedom fighter is run for city council, run for state government, get involved, put signs up, get involved in Long Island Majority, get involved in 1776, get involved in these different groups. But we have to get where we're having intelligent conversations with our friends and family members, because what's happening, folks, is, and I know we talk about it in a segmented fashion, is you have this multifaceted approach that the left is doing to create a bigger voter base, to create distension and create an enemy, which is the big, bad, white, right, racist MAGA people that really hate, human beings, humanity, hate homosexuals, and are evil people. And when we do that, we make this population of MAGA people, we put them over here, we bring in immigrants because that's the humane thing, while we simultaneously kill babies, and then we simultaneously confuse people about their gender and mutilate their bodies and teach our kids to do that. There's only one or two things we're trying to do there: create control and create a slave class and an elite class. And that's exactly what's happening. And we've allowed it to infiltrate every system of government, our education, our media, and it's straight out of Karl Marx's playbook, the Communist Manifesto. And from a solutionary standpoint, I think there isn't one silver bullet. Your organization, Shawn, mine, guys like I'm trying to remember his name, Wall Builders, I should know his name, David Barton, and a host of others have great groups. They're doing some amazing things. There's Dr. Rand Paul, there's Simone Gold. I mean, I could go on. There's amazing people out there on the political front, on the freedom fighting front, doing stuff. But there are displaced, confused people on the Republican side as well that are voting in rhinos, that are taking their flu shots, that are taking their medications, and they don't see the global cabal and connectivity between pharmaceuticals, CDC, FDA, AMA, and I go down the list of all the different corporate pharmacological greed and these bureaucracies that control all of us. And so what do we do about it? We've got to be hyper vigilant. We've got to start talking to people. We've got to just every day think about, what can I do to push freedom forward, and who can I recruit to push freedom forward with me? Because, I know of 3 multimillionaires and billionaires right now that contributed to my campaign, but they also contributed to the campaign of communists, aka rhinos.
Yeah, and we have to take that good fight and make sure that we're spending our time and our resources and our energy wisely. Last thing we want anybody to do is get duped by somebody who's going to wind up getting elected to Congress or the Senate and send money to Ukraine. I got very upset this morning and look, and I'm not one of these, and it's, the criticism is going to come from the left-wing media that you're a Russian stooge, and you must be Vladimir Putin's puppet, and you'd bend over for Putin, and all these different things that they like to say. As Trump was, I don't know Putin. I think it would be great if we got along with Russia, but I don't know Putin. I've never seen Vladimir Putin. I don't even know him from Vladimir. I don't know who Putin is. I've never seen Putin. Okay, but I look at these things. When it comes to Russia specifically and the Ukraine war, and when I see that, we're getting ready to send another $625 million over to Ukraine in military aid, and I think it would be a phenomenal idea in order for the people of our country to know that our government is spending our money and responsibly spending our tax money, the right way. I think it would be a phenomenal idea if we took, you want to balance the budget. You just mentioned Rand Paul. He has that penny plan. You want to take 1 penny out of every dollar, cut it from the budget year after year. All of a sudden, we're going to have a balanced budget. We'll be able to trim that deficit. We'll be able to start to bring this country back. That'll really get a handle on inflation. But there's a lot of money in our budget that goes to other countries for whatever reason. We call it foreign aid, but some of it is $50 million for gender studies in Pakistan. Guys, I can make that real simple. You can instruct every person in Pakistan that's a part of this program to look between their legs and tell you if there's something hanging. And if they are, they're one thing. And if there's not something hanging, they're another. Right? And now I just saved the country $50 million. I mean, that's a real
That's
big,
called the Alabama research study.
yeah, that's what that is. But, there's walking drunk lizards on a treadmill. There's the study about male pattern baldness in space. This is all real stuff that we're wasting money on, some of it in our country, some of it in other countries. And the point of the matter is, I say, take all the foreign aid, not that all foreign aid is bad, but a lot of it is probably wasteful. Take it all out of the budget. And every time we propose sending money to another country, I want live, televised, public, free to watch, free to access, easy to access debates, okay, and discussion on why whatever package of money is going to Ukraine or Pakistan or Uganda or whatever, why that money is better spent over there than it is over here. I want that. And I think the minute we start putting these people on the record, our representatives that were elected by the people, whether the process was fair or unfair, whether they won a U.S. election somehow, quote unquote won, if we have to use air quotes, which is fine, right? I want there to be accountability. Why should we send money to Ukraine? Well, it's a national security. That doesn't answer the question. How is that more of a national security problem than what's happening on the southern border? 5 million people have crossed that border since Joe Biden has been sworn in as president. 5 million, okay? That's a lot bigger, a much bigger number than the members of people in the Russian military. A lot bigger. So when you want to talk about an invasion, yes, what's happening in Ukraine, it's terrible to some of these places on the Russian and Ukrainian border. Families have been displaced. People have been hurt. People have been killed. Men and women have been conscripted into the army. Kids are fighting in the war. But, at what point do we have to say, all right, that's bad, but we got to take care of our own problems? That's why I want public, free to access, easy to access discussions on every dollar that leaves this country. I am willing to bet, and there will still be people who push for it, but those people, I'm willing to bet that the majority of that behavior stops, and all of a sudden you're going to start to see bridges that are being built, potholes being fixed, the border wall going up. 87,000 IRS agents are all of a sudden going to learn how to work for Border Patrol. I think this is something that we should really try to do and push for, or else we're just going to continue to see our money flushed into the laundromat known as Ukraine.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, dude, people, the greatest, I guess, marketing tool that we've been able to use with mobilizing and weaponizing the mainstream media is mind control and gaslighting. Because they've taken pretty much anybody who's not American and said now made it so these people are impoverished, they're victims, we have to support them, oh poor them. And I'm over here and I'm seeing my buddy down the street, his small business just went out of it, like he closed his doors because of COVID, because of the inflation rate, because of the gas prices, because the Fed is just hitting the print button on the money that Sleepy Joe's getting from Corn Pop.
Yep.
Right. And then we're sending it overseas. Do I feel sorry for those people? Yeah, there's a lot of people I feel sorry for. But you know what? I raised my right hand in 1998 when I joined the United States Marine Corps to protect U.S. citizens, to protect this Constitution and this republic. And so why is it we become a society that even vilifying the name Make America Great Again, to do that when Reagan did it in 80 and 81, if people don't see that as mind control, if they don't see that as just this frightening proposition that we as a country could be okay with a president demonizing Make America Great Again, that we should put our interest first, that if somebody's going to have a NATO or have a UN, that they should contribute as much as we do. It's astounding to me and shocking, and I know I'm not alone here, Shawn, that you even have to have that discussion of wow, can't we take care of America first? And how much money do we continue to pour into this war and this grievance that's between Russia and Ukraine? And yes, is Vladimir Putin, could he be considered a bully? Yeah, he could be. But
sure,
putting that aside for a minute, how long do we do that after we just had a 20-year war that really didn't have a conclusion, where so many of my friends died, and we pulled people, Sleepy Joe pulled him out the wrong way. People lost their lives. We lost all, worldwide credibility with the way that he handled that. And now we just go into another worldwide conflict, and now we're funding it. Where does that money come from? When does it end?
Yeah, it's not going to end because people are getting something from it. 10% for the big guy. The reason I turned my hat around, it says "Make America Great Again." I like to wear it backwards, but I want everyone to know exactly what it is that I'm wearing right here. And there's someone on Twitter brought up a really good point and said, we got to stop it. We got to stop abbreviating it MAGA. We got to stop that. We got to continue to say what it stands for. Make America Great Again, right? Because could you imagine
it's a good point.
if Joe Biden in his speech was forced to say that? Instead of saying the MAGA Republicans are, they're a threat. If he had to say, make America great again is a threat to the country, how stupid he would have sounded. Now, listen, guy sounds stupid no matter what he says. Now, we understand he said he was Puerto Rican, all right? I was raised in the Puerto Rican community. No, you aren't. And I had plenty to say about that yesterday. If Sleepy Joe is Puerto Rican, then Stacey Abrams is physically fit. Okay, let's just go ahead and say that. The beast of the Southeast. She's got a big, beautiful gap in the teeth. We could probably kick a field goal. I'm serious. She's the only person capable of making Rosie O'Donnell look small. I said that. All right, whatever. Oh, you fat shaming. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. I don't care. All right, it's seriously. We look at Joe Biden. He could say stupid things. It would sound really, really bad if he said that making America great again was a threat to the United States. But that's what MAGA means. But I refuse to say MAGA. Now, it's make America great again. We have to say the full thing, because do you really think it would be easy for the media to gaslight people by saying, those make America great again Republicans, those are bad people. What? Huh? It's like they say that those women's rights protesters, when talking about abortion, they don't call them pro-abortion protesters. They call them women's rights advocates. It's all about winning the branding battle. And that's how Donald Trump won in 2016. A, he came with a message that make America great again, right? Because Obama had run this country into the ground. B, he branded all of his opponents, whether they were in the primary or up until the general, as people that were unlikable. Crooked Hillary, Little Marco, Lion Ted. All of these different names, right? Crazy Bernie. Pocahontas. He still does it, right? But he does a Sleepy Joe. He makes these, he wins, and that's what he's been doing his whole career. And that's how the mainstream media continues to kind of beat us on a lot of these issues. They keep winning the branding battle because they have the power, they have the influence, they have the reach. But what they don't seem to realize, what a lot of people don't seem to realize, is that independent media, folks like us, together have a bigger reach than them. The mainstream media needs the mainstream. It needs a stream. It needs people. It needs more than just television's on in an airport or a gym, CNN, to be relevant, right? If the mainstream media held all the power in this country, Kyle Rittenhouse would be in jail. He isn't. The mainstream media convicted him before there was even a trial, but he was acquitted because independent media, those internet sleuths who got to the bottom of who these protesters were, no, they weren't black people. And there's a reason why the mainstream media called them Black Lives Matter protesters and not pedophiles like they actually were, that Kyle Rittenhouse shot. They want you to believe that a white guy with a gun shot black people. He didn't. He shot an Antifa guy with gauges in his ear, okay? Like the guy, he's a freak. This guy, Gage Grosskreutz, who is now trying to change his name because he's being harassed. Well, poor you. Maybe you shouldn't have joined Antifa and then tried to put an innocent kid in jail, Kyle Rittenhouse. We will win these battles, but I feel like one of the biggest problems that we have on our side, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we get mad for about 5 minutes, and then we kind of start to simmer down, and then lose focus and forgot why we were upset yesterday, and then the media comes right in, sweeps it all under the rug, and then it's on to the next. We were pissed August 9th, the day after Mar-a-Lago got raided. Truth Social was popping. Getter was popping. Twitter was popping. Anything that you tweeted, if you were a conservative, about the FBI, instantly went viral. Instantly. It was trending everywhere. We should still be mad that a former president of the United States, his home was raided for a clerical paperwork dispute. We should be pissed. And yet, where are we? Where are we? We're fighting back. We're getting knocked back on abortion. We're arguing about gas prices. Why are we not upset about the abuse of the Constitution? Why are we not upset that if it can happen to Donald Trump, it can happen to me? I don't understand it.
Well, I think it really boils down to, I mean, we're a culture of, it's all about these. It's all about these. The sound bites move really, really quick, and people are more about saying than they are about doing. And we've been so removed from our government. And I say, go back really, 2015, prior to Donald Trump coming in, there wasn't this, I'll just say, connection between the American people voting, concerned. There is so much awareness around being a responsible citizen, being a responsible member of this republic, contributing, voting, like more so than there's ever been. So let's say we had 5%, maybe now, if we're lucky enough, we have 12%, but it's kind of like, I feel like we spent the last 3 years of the COVID scam figuring out how to fight, and we're still figuring that out, but you're also seeing how short people's resolve is. Meaning people are just willing to give up. Oh, I can't do it. Or, I've got soccer practice for my kid, or like there are very few giving 120%. Like where they're like, I'm all in. I'm not tithing to the church anymore. I'm tithing to Donald Trump. I'm not tithing to the church anymore. I'm tithing to loud majority. I'm not tithing to, this entity. I'm tithing towards changing my country. And not to say for my Christian friends out there, not to say that tithing to the church is wrong, but my point is if you can't leverage and help the movement with your time, and you can't do it with your hands, then you need to do it with your money. And if everybody did that self-evaluation and didn't spend as much time, do we need these different streams? Do we need shows like ours? Do we need people educating? Yes. But there's also so many Americans out there that God gave them a different genius that they're not utilizing. They're just sitting on the couch, eating popcorn like they have, or talking to Corn Pop, eating their popcorn. And they're doing the same thing that their parents did. And we just got out of this 1776, 1970s Vietnam kind of role of being part of our government. And we got just gaslit to think, hey, our government cares about us. It's going to take care of us. Maybe I'll vote. Maybe I won't. I'll go to work. I'll go to soccer practice. I'll pick up my kid. And that's my Groundhog Day, every day, 365 routine I did, or I do. And that's what we've gotten ourselves into. And that's why if we're not really careful, that's why we're going to lose this country.
I think you're right about that. And I want to get to another article that you sent me right before we started because I'm upset about it. And I want to get your take on it first because you're a parent. But this article now, Planned Parenthood is apparently trying to market puberty blockers for children in a cartoon. So we have Dr. Cordie. We also have Cordie the dad. What say you about this? Because I know I'm pissed off about it, but I want to hear your take on it.
Well, I think that, it's one thing to say, hey, whatever you want to do with your body, you do, right? Meaning from a constitutional perspective, you want to cut off your scrotum. Hey, you do you.
You do you.
Just definitely don't tell me I have to, right? I like mine. Right. I like mine. So you do you, I'm going to do me. That's the greatest thing about the Constitution. But now when we start to, really cross that line of now saying as educators, we're going to create these different prepositions. We're going to confuse kids. Like, even in the article, some of the experts that are supporting this puberty blocking technology are talking to kids and educating kids in a CRT way of, hey, we know you're confused and puberty's a crazy time. Well, it's your choice if you want to take this and make a different choice about the way you want to identify. And I mean, kids are impressionable. So you think about first grade, second grade, third grade, kindergarten, where they start to put this in the heads of of these children. And to just let you know how impressionable kids are, my kids, I've never talked to them about patriotism, but they love the flag and they love Donald Trump. And it's not like we sat there and I brainwashed them, just that they're sponges. They pick up so much. And so when you have this curriculum and now you have this drug and you're pushing the drug and you're pushing the curriculum for single moms that don't know better, for people that are just barely getting by paycheck to paycheck, or maybe there's a transportation issue and they can't take their kid to Awaken Academy, or they can't afford to do $3,500 a year, which isn't that much if you think about it, and get taxes taken out to support the public school they don't agree with. I mean, what do you do with that? You try to help your kids, but how do you help them after their brain has just been filled with this toxic ideology?
I mean, there's this toxic ideology now that you mentioned, and the goal of that, if you listen to the KGB whistleblower Yuri Bezmenov, is to soften them up and mold them into what the state, the government, the country, the tyrants in charge want them to be, versus what you would want your children to be, you the parent, and we the people would want our kids to be. And that's the biggest distinction to make right now when you're talking about sending your kids into public schools. And then the other thing is when you're talking about puberty blockers or hormone blockers, or again, this branding that the left wants to call it gender affirming care. It sounds nice. It sounds inclusive and accepting. Gender affirming care. It's not gender affirming care. You're giving children the exact same drugs that are used to chemically castrate sex offenders. You are. We see this in the Matt Walsh documentary. We know exactly what's going on. It's the exact same drugs that are used to chemically castrate sex offenders. Puberty blockers. Why would you want a kid to block going through puberty? Are you afraid they're going to find something out about themselves that you don't want them to find out? That's going to ruin your plan? That it's going to maybe bring them closer to their real identity instead of what you want to see them grow up to be? That's what scares the crap out of me. And this has been going on for a long time, and now people are finally starting to wake up to it. But this has been going on. I remember hearing about this thing, these types of things, puberty blockers, hormone blockers, genital mutilation that happen usually in Middle Eastern countries, that started to happen here in the United States. I remember hearing about this back in 2016, 2017. And people who spoke out against it were instantly removed from social media. That's when the bans started on Twitter. And they started on social media right around that time. When people started to talk and speak out about these puberty blockers, these hormone blockers, and that if you were pushing that on children, perhaps you were behaving like a predator because you were preying on somebody weaker than you, preying on somebody that couldn't fight back for themselves. And now we see that, leave it up to Planned Parenthood, whose founder wanted to single-handedly, was a eugenicist, wanted to exterminate an entire segment of the U.S. population. And those would be those people of color that we hear so much about from Kamala Harris, a fake person of color. She's not a black person, ladies and gentlemen. She's Indian and Jamaican. All right, it's important to know that. What is it with, first of all, what is it with the Democrats? All right, Beto O'Rourke isn't Spanish. Kamala Harris isn't black. Pocahontas, we know her story. She's not an Indian. She's fake. And now Joe Biden, he's not a Puerto Rican. Why can't they just tell us who they actually are? What do you think they're afraid of?
Well, before I answer that, what I wanted to say is, for our viewers out there, you should go and Google gender surgeries that went wrong.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many articles about people talking about that, Shawn, where they were mutilated, regret it, now their life is ruined, that, they have problems going to the bathroom. I mean, and that just tells you how horrible the whole thing is. But that's what you don't hear any sound bites on. But to your point, it's all with creating a victim society to get everybody just pitted against one another. So like a Trojan horse, you just take over the population. You have a controlled state. You have an elite class and a slave class because everybody's so busy arguing about these social issues that they've created while they create a permanent voting base that's illegal, that we fund, that we work our tails off
Yep.
for, that we pay taxes for, and that these people just come in and take jobs, and our friends just continue to go out of business. So no, I mean, it's just it's totally a pandering play for the brainwashed people that have bought into this continued racial division that they want to create in this country. I mean, like, as a white man, I don't know how I can't even imagine what slaves went through.
No.
But for 7 generations, 10 generations, 20 generations later, 40 generations, how many generations in a family you are removed from that?
Yep.
To still be talking about that? Wow.
And to be making comparisons about it, where you have these athletes, for instance, NFL players, NBA players talking about how, the NFL is modern day slavery. Really? I never met a slave that was making $400,000 league minimum. Right? I never met a slave who was 1 out of 12 lucky men on a basketball team making $5 million at minimum a year. Show me that.
With
Was
endorsement
that in Roots?
deals.
Where was that? I didn't see that. It's just I can't believe. And then there's these people, some of these folks, and it's not for me. It's not a war on minorities, right? It's just like the Joy Reids of the world who have a big show on a cable news network, who wants to tell me that she is oppressed. I mean, where are these people coming from? But I want to go into this. There's a quote from this cartoon that Planned Parenthood put out there, and I want to get your take on this quote. It's, quote, "There are medicines you can take." This is talking to children. "There are medicines you can take to help your body start the process, like hormone replacement therapy," the cartoon added. Quote, "Some people decide on hormones or surgeries to help their bodies match up to their gender identities or how they feel inside about themselves. Your gender identity is real. You should be the one to decide what changes you want to make to your body. If you're transgender or non-binary, you may find that your puberty experiences don't line up with your gender identity. That feeling can be uncomfortable, scary, and stressful. If that sounds like you, know that you're not alone." The cartoon then pivoted to promote puberty blockers, saying that they were a viable alternative to going through the process naturally. This comes from the Daily Wire, Virginia Kruta on the Daily Wire. And there it is again, the left, whether it's climate change, whether it's natural immunity, or whether it's this, a war on natural law. What say you?
No, it's disgusting. It's demonic, because all it's designed to do, just like, so many of their motives, is break up that family core. And we've seen the kids, and there are studies out there about a mother and a father, whatever your opinions are. Look at the research around a nuclear family where there is one mother and one father. Look at the research of families that go through divorce and how kids turn out, right? And I'm not going down the rabbit hole of, condemning or shaming anybody. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there's so much research to support that nuclear dynamic. And, for 70 plus years, 80 plus years, the communist agenda, and you can look at the 45 points, so many of them are about breaking up that nuclear family, threatening that nuclear family, making it seem like, oh, well, this is, antiquated and outdated. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing this thing where now parents are circumvented, and you're even seeing it with vaccines. You're seeing it with abortions, where these people like Kathy Hochul and Whitless in Michigan, yep, and Adolf Newsom are trying to give kids choices, not only, I think, also so they can have a future voter. Because when you can appeal to a child that's impressionable, young, you can brainwash them, and you can say, hey, I know what you're going through. I know that things are crazy in your head and you're confused. Here's a pill that's going to fix it all. I mean, that's what they're doing with abortion. That's what they're doing with vaccines. They're dividing, and then in some cases they're normalizing to create this again, just force of voters, to create these people that will consistently vote blue, that will become victims themselves. And I mean, it's disgusting. It's
I
disgusting. It's
equate it.
totally pushing out God.
Yeah, I equate it to a dog getting nothing but treats all his life. I've said this all the time when it comes to, whether it's minority communities or just folks that reliably vote Democrat, they do so because they think they're going to get something. The same reason why a dog sits down and gives paw, because he or she, the dog, thinks it's going to get a treat or something that tastes good. But if all you do is get your dog to sit and give paw and give it treats all day long, that dog's going to be fat, lazy, and useless and not be able to serve any other purpose other than the one that gets it a treat. And in this case, the treat is some sort of handout or feeling good or a pat on the back, or it's a stimulus check, or it's something. It's whatever their handout may be. And the trick in return that the Democrats want is that vote in the ballot box. And now when they start to wage war in our elections, soon that's not going to matter because they've lost so many people. But I totally agree with what you're saying with regards to creating that voting block, creating those new voters, especially the young ones. But I think, because we have a lot of folks in our organization here who are parents to kids in high school. I think there's a lot of kids in high school right now who are looking at this, and there are plenty of them who believe it, but there are a lot more than we know of who are afraid to speak out, who look at this and go, that is crazy, and I am not participating in something like that. I mean, there was a high school in Vermont that, I don't know if you heard about this, their entire volleyball team, girls volleyball team, had to leave. They were banned from their locker room because one transgender person who was a male who identified as a female wanted to change in the locker room and didn't feel comfortable changing around all the other girls. So the entire team had to change in a single-use bathroom. The entire team got taken out of the bathroom for one person. And I always say this now. Crazy is the new normal. Normal is the new crazy. What used to be crazy, a man could be a woman. No, they can't. Well, that's crazy. That's the new normal. That's what they want to institute. I won't play into that game. Normal, what used to be normal, where there are two different sexes and it's based off of your biology and there's nothing you could do to change it. Like you said, you want to do something to your body, go ahead and do it. Just don't ask me to play along, right? That's the new crazy. I'm sorry, that's crazy. That's the new normal. And if you think that's crazy, you're crazy and you get outcast. But I do think things are starting to flip. I do think that people are starting to rely on logic again, that they've overplayed their hand and that they've went too far. And I certainly hope organizations like yours and organizations like mine can start to bridge that gap and bring people in and be that big tent for people to feel comfortable and be able to speak out. Because I know there's a lot of people from your coast to my coast in this country who are not happy about the direction that it's going, who want to speak out and who are afraid, who are scared. What do you say to those people as an extension of that olive branch to get them on board with movements like ours, to get them comfortable with speaking out, to let them know that free speech is still something that this country is all about?
We've got to get involved in school boards. And, if I had it to do over again, Shawn, I might not have run for U.S. Senate. I might have run for school board because, you're just seeing day in and day out how important these state races are. And, we're coming up, 5 weeks away from some of the biggest elections. I think this midterm in 2024 are going to determine whether we steamroll into communism or not. And I think there's so much at stake. And I think that every American just needs to at some point look themselves in the mirror like you did and like I did right after the COVID scam started. And we said, you know what? I don't know. And I'll speak for myself. I said, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know what's going to happen if I don't do something. If I don't stand up, if I don't do activism, I'm going to lose my business. If I don't continue to fight, I'm going to lose the future that I want my kids to walk into. And for you as a patriot, kind of putting that back for a second, just because I want to know, brother, what was it for you? For me, it was kind of just like, hey, I'm going to lose my business and lose the future of my kids. Was it just you just being a patriot? You just knew like, hey, this is the right time to stand up and I got to do this?
So essentially we had a lot of anti-lockdown rallies that started to pop up in the early spring of 2020. And the fake news came out like crazy here on Long Island and started smearing these people as grandma killers and super spreaders. And I noticed the one thing that was common about all of these folks who were protesting the lockdowns, mind you. They were protesting the lockdowns. They weren't out there waving Trump flags. That wasn't happening yet. But a lot of these people had patriotic, stuff on. They had either a MAGA hat or they had an American flag, just an American flag, which I loved, all my life. It's behind me now, and I will continue to love it as far as I'm allowed to live on this planet, right? It was that moment where I said, there's an uprising here, and this is something that we can really convince, we can get to people, we can tell people that these lockdowns are anti-American. It is a war on patriotism. It is a war on your freedom, and we have to stand up for ourselves. And then George Floyd happened, the whole Black Lives Matter, where all of the COVID rules for about 2-3 weeks were suspended. You could go out, no mask. You were allowed to gather in massive groups. They were allowed to have funerals again. There was all of these. Then I said, you know what? There is no reason for lockdowns anymore. And then the boat parades started to pop up here on Long Island, around this area. Florida and some of these other places. And I said, these boat parades are awesome, and they're skirting the rules because they're not really gathering. They're all on boats. There's nothing anybody can do about it. So why don't we just do the same thing, but instead of boat parades, we're going to do car parades instead, because more people got cars here on Long Island than have boats. And there's a lot of roads that we can take over, and we may even inconvenience a few people. We may even, it may slow things down on Sunrise Highway or the Long Island Expressway from end to end here on Long Island. And it may make people stop and take notice that there are people who are pissed off here. And it worked. You know what? It worked. And now I have the state Democrat Party coming after us on Twitter, talking about how it's a terrible thing that we're distributing lawn signs for Lee Zeldin. That's how scared they are in the state of New York, where their official Twitter account is watching our show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and posting screenshots saying these guys, they're January 6ers, and they're supporting Lee Zeldin. He's an extremist. They're going that all the way to those lengths to say that we shouldn't be doing that. It worked. And so I say to anybody who's watching right now, if you're pissed about something that's going on in your state, whether it's a red state or a blue state, let this be your moment. Look yourself in the mirror, like Dr. Cordie just said, and make sure that you declare to yourself that this is the day, this is the last day that you're willing to put up with this nonsense. This is the last minute that you're willing to let someone trample you. This is you they're trampling on. It may not be on your doorstep today. It may not be there tomorrow, but it sure as hell is going to get there next week. And if it's not there next week, it's probably coming the week after that. And if it doesn't come the week after that, it might come next month. But it's coming. It is coming. Whether you believe it or not, it's coming for you. So if you're listening, if you hear it, if you think all of this is fear-mongering and conspiracy theory, just remember, every time you label us fear-mongers or conspiracy theorists, what we say winds up coming true. Let this be your moment to declare to yourself and to your friends, to your family, to your neighbors, to the other people in your county, your town, your block, your apartment complex, that you will not be trampled on. You will not have your rights taken from you. This is your country, too. It's not just my country and Dr. Cordie's country. It's our country. This is where we live. And they are not going to take these rights from you. They're not going to take the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and most importantly, the pursuit of happiness. You have that right. You were born with that right. God gave you those rights, not government. Not Gavin Newsom, not Kathy Hochul, not Lori Lightfoot or Gretchen Whitmer, not Phil Murphy in New Jersey, not Tom Wolf in Pennsylvania. God gave you those rights. They're your rights, so you defend them from this point forward. That's what you have to do. That's what it was for me. It's what it was for so many people here on Long Island. I'm sure that's what it was for people out there on the West Coast, and I believe that's what it's going to be going forward.
Well, that is why I love this guy. No, mic drop, man. Mic drop. No, I love that. I love that passion, and we all need that, Shawn, because without that passion and without people really looking downstairs and looking what's sitting between their legs and saying, what do I have left in the tank to give another 20, 30, 40, 50%, we're going to lose this thing. And I think a lot of cognitive dissonance has set in, but we need to get our next, we need to hit fifth gear. Like we need to get another gear as a movement, as a whole, and just get out of egos and names of groups. I think that's one of the things that we struggle with in this state. Everybody's still trapped into, there's so many different groups, and initially there were no groups, there was no people really leading in every state, I think you could say. Then the groups came out, then everybody was trying to like do their own and speak out, prove themselves, get media attention, all that. We're past that point. So what I would say to people across the country that are listening is, if you have a group and you have a mission, start seeing how you can put that olive branch out to other groups within your state. Because if we all just try to just get our own thing, we're all selfish and we all put our egos first, we're no better than the Democrats at that point, and that's how we're going to lose.
Absolutely.
And that's really, in my opinion, the only way I think we can lose is if we can't come together, get past the rhinos, the money, the name recognition, and the egos. That's what's going to kill this thing before it starts.
I agree with you, and that's the same thing that some of that's happening here in New York, and you just got to get past it and realize that the big picture is, there are worse things than, maybe losing your group. As a guy running for Senate out here, Joe Pinion, he used to have a television show on Newsmax. And he always used to I think it was his mother, I think is the story. And he quit his TV show to run for Senate against Chuck Schumer. Not a race that a lot of people would think, it would be possible to win for a Republican. But if there's anyone who can do it, it's probably this guy. And he told his mom, there's worse things than losing my TV show, and one of them is losing my country. And I think that's where we have to be as Americans. We can't lose our country. And I believe that because there is an actual loud majority from coast to coast, not a group per se, but an ideology, a round rejection of socialism, a round love of this flag and this country, the same country that you fought for, that you signed on the dotted line to protect, defend, and preserve, that country. And I think that's the common goal, that same feeling after, unfortunately, I have to go back to this, but 9/11, where there was an American flag on every doorstep. You could not go into a Walmart or a Target or any of those stores and find an American flag in the days after 9/11, especially out here, because everyone wanted one to display that we are proud of being America, despite the black eye that we were walking around with. We were proud to be Americans, and it's because we were Americans that we were going to overcome that senseless act of evil. Now, there's another senseless act of evil going on right now, and it's found a home in the Democrat Party, and we need that sense of unity to come through again and to win the day. And I think it's possible. I think it's right around the corner, and I think we're going to get a taste of that in November.
Agreed. And I think, leaders like Joe, that you mentioned from Newsmax, there's so many leaders. For every leader that is put on a pedestal and hailed as, whether it's you, me, Tina Forte, there's so many people.
She's awesome, by the way.
She is awesome, right? That we followed and that we love, that maybe got recognition. There's so many that didn't get recognition, or should have gotten more and they didn't, for what they contributed. And it's those silent people like Joe that pull away from their show, and maybe some people around the country saw it. Many probably didn't, or didn't know that he gave that up. And those are the people that are going to change the country. And there's probably, thousands of people watching this show right now, and maybe 100 out of those 1,000 feel that way, that they've contributed so much, they've given so much, and they're not being recognized. They're not being like it's not coming full circle for them yet. And I would just echo what Joe said, is that if we don't do this, if it's all about us getting ours, and it's not about our kids getting what they need, and it's not about the future of this country, we all lose.
Yep.
We all lose at that point. And so I really appreciate you sharing that story, man, because God bless that guy, man. Because there's so many people in that guy's position. They're not doing that.
Yeah.
They're not doing that at all. and he chose to pick up the sword and charge the hill.
He did, and he is charging the hill awfully hard. He's out there campaigning with Lee Zeldin every day, and we're doing whatever we can, hopefully, to see and push those guys over the edge. We're coming up on 10:20 p.m. Been going for a solid hour here. We apologize for the late start, but hopefully the audio. It sounds like the audio worked out pretty well today, so it looks like we got those kinks worked out. We'll be adding more features as we continue along. And before we go, Dr. Cordie, you have anything to say to the folks watching Coast to Coast tonight?
Well, I would just end it on this. We'll be finally having, all the different streams on my different platforms as well. Yep. As I get my good friend and young assistant, Alex, going on that. And, all I would say is just tune into what Shawn's doing, tune into what I'm doing, get involved, make sure you're getting ready to go out and vote, get involved in a campaign. There's so much we can all do, and we've got to continue to do. Whatever you've got to do to hit fifth gear, you need to do it right now, because we've got our kids, our grandkids, and our kids' kids to think about.
Agreed. And on that note, I think it's a solid way to wrap this baby up. It's been another good week of the Unalienable Right. We're here on a bunch of platforms. My name's Shawn Farash. This is Dr. Cordie Williams on the other side there of the screen, the good-looking one. And we'll be back next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, coast to coast as well. As always, same time, same place on Rumble and Getter and all the friendly platforms, and also, unfortunately, Facebook and YouTube, too, while we continue to build our audience. If we can have everybody on here share what we're doing, we'd appreciate it, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much, everybody. God bless you, and have a good night.
God bless you guys.